Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the show, the RR Show, the best show on the internet, as you should know by now. Today, we're jumping in to have a little bit of fun in r/PettyRevenge. Nothing too serious, but a light-hearted payback. This is what everyone likes. So, jumping in with our first story from Not the Golden Child 616, Karen's rant on town's Facebook backfires. So I originally posted this on Fuck You Karen, but one of the comments mentioned it should be on here instead, so hey, here it is reposted. I work at a rather famous home supply and maintenance store. I won't say the name just in case, but to set the scene, a month or so ago, Karen and her husband came in to buy an appliance. They happened to come on a very busy day, and we only had 2 people in appliances, one of whom was on her lunch. Well, apparently Karen wasn't happy that a couple of men who'd already been waiting were served ahead of her and pitched a tantrum, even going so far as going up to the girl leaving for her lunch, who was no longer in uniform and was talking to another employee, and berating her for ignoring her. The girl told her multiple times she wasn't on the clock, and Karen informed her it didn't matter. She would help her right then. The girl told her she could wait or take her business elsewhere and went about her business. So this apparently pissed off Karen and her husband as he proceeded to call customer service. I happened to be covering their desk and began yelling at me that he was a GD man and that if we're gonna serve other men before his wife, we would fucking serve him first. I laughed at him, said that is not how things work, and hung up the phone. We don't take abuse at my store. I definitely refuse to, and the managers generally support us in that. The funny part, our town has a local Facebook page where you can post reviews and events. And so, Karen decided to make a massive post about what had happened. Only she actually didn't. She twisted it so that it seemed she'd been purposely ignored. She hadn't. She just didn't want to wait in line. Denied service. She wasn't. She'd confronted and cursed out a teenager who was off the clock. And she and her husband had been verbally abused by every employee in the store. They had spoken to the girl and me, and neither of us abused them. We were both abused. Of course, at first, she got sympathy from a lot of women of the same mentality. A lot of no one wants to work anymore comments. But one of our cashiers happened to be told about it and showed me. Now, I'm petty. I'll admit it beforehand. But I made a fake Facebook account. I didn't do social media much beyond lurking on Reddit, and joined the town's page. Needless to say, I first commented, in explicit detail, everything that actually happened, including direct quotes from the other girl. Then to sink the fuck you Karen knife just a little bit deeper, I copied my post and replied to every comment on her post. This isn't actually what happened. What happened was, insert comment here. Within moments, the entire town turned on her, hundreds of comments calling her a liar and a horrid person. The next morning, the post was gone, and she never returned to our store. Was I a bit of a Karen myself? Maybe. But when it comes to my fellow employees, I tend to fight petty fire with petty fire. And thanks to this situation, and several more since then, I've become the go-to for dealing with Karens and rude customers when my co-workers can't get a hold of a manager. No way this can end badly, right? Oh dear. Just for the record, I am not accountable for my own actions if I ever encounter a Karen in the wild. I have hilarious insights into ways of annoying people. Just go up to them and blow raspberries. You play Karen, I play immaturity. Let's see who wins that battle. Anyway, next story is from J. Barlocker. Build me an expensive fence. One night, I had a knock on my office door from the funeral home owners down the street. They told me that they just brought the property between us and were going to demolish the house to build a parking lot. They said that they wanted to build a nice vinyl fence between us and that they would pay for everything. All they needed from me was to sign an agreement saying that it was okay for them to build the fence. This agreement was 3 pages long. I told them that I would be happy to take the agreement and read or sign it tomorrow because it was already 9 PM. Oh, they told me they couldn't leave the document with me and that I had to sign it right now. I responded that I don't ever sign legal documents without reading them completely, and that I don't have time right now to read it. Then suggested that they mail me a copy. After this, they got very pushy, told me that I have to sign it, and that I have to sign it right now. At this point, I told them to get off my property and slammed my door shut. I did some research, and city code required them to build a very specific type of fence because we had 2 different zonings of property next to each other. A bit later, they built a foam core concrete fence that was 8 feet tall. It looked good, and to an untrained eye, it could look to meet the requirements of the city ordinance. At this time, I also received a letter from their lawyer about the old wooden fence that they also left standing, which was on their side of the property line, and that if I tore it down, repaired it, or did anything else to it, that they would take legal action against me. Cue the PettyRevenge. I found a city ordinance that outlaws a fence within a fence. It basically says that there is only 1 fence allowed per property line. I took that to the City Planning Commission, and they forced my neighbour to remove the wooden fence. I refused to allow him or his workers onto my property. This means they had to go over the 8-foot concrete fence to remove the old wood fence. After that was completed, I went back to the Planning Commission to demand that the correct fence be built. City ordinance stipulated an 8-foot tall solid masonry fence and explicitly forbid the use of foam core concrete fencing in this situation. The commission sided with me and made him tear down his brand new fence. After that, he put up a temporary chain link fence, freestanding fence between our properties. The wind kept blowing it down, so I asked him to take care of it so that my chickens didn't get out of my yard. He told me to figure it out myself. Well, enter MaliciousCompliance. So I welded his rented fence pieces together. They were no longer portable, but they stopped blowing down. They were also taking a really long time to get the permanent fence in, so I ordered a Borat-style neon green Speedo. You should Google it if you really want to understand. Honestly, do not do that. It's a trap. I then wore that during the night in the summer while I sat by my fire pit. The guests of funerals could clearly see all of me lit up in the twilight. I like to think this helped motivate them to put in an opaque fence. When he finally put in the correct fence, his workers trampled about 30 feet of my rose bushes and killed them. So I had the planning commission order him to pay me damages for the roses. The workers also broke some of my sprinklers and I was able to force him to repair those too. To top this all off, he stained his side of the new fence and left mine with only stain splatters and stain drips. Since I was batting 1-0, I went back to the city ordinance, found one of the prohibited this exact situation, and back to the commission I went. After more fighting, he had to pay to stain my side of the fence too. It took 5.5 years of petty revenge, but now I have a beautiful tall fence to keep my yard quiet and safe. Added a lot of value to my property too. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Funeral Home, sign that! Yes, very good, always read everything. If someone's in a hurry or pressuring you, it's probably because they have some sort of malicious intent. Everything can wait until tomorrow, so the more people pressure you, the more you insist on reading that bad boy. Also, if you haven't already, please don't Google Borat bikini. Just don't. Or if you do, I warned you. Next up, by you/deleted, my last glorious day as a Starbucks barista. I used to work as a Starbucks barista. We had a woman who would come in every morning and order, I shit you not, a double tall vanilla latte with 3/8 a pump of vanilla. No. Not a half pump, 3/8 a pump. She even made one of the baristas mark our bottle pump with a Sharpie. Every single day, the first cup we would make, no matter who made it, was always wrong. Either too sweet or not sweet enough. So after a while, I began to just pretend to make another drink, pull the steam wand and wave my hand about like a fool behind the machine. I would hand her back the same drink we made her the first time, and it was always perfect the second time, even though it was the same drink. On my last shift of work, this woman decided to come in twice that day. She was being obnoxious and talking on her cell phone about deals and her assistant and essentially just announcing her importance to everyone in the room. It was free in the spring and the place was filled with teenagers ordering frappuccinos. I had both blenders going and both steam ones going when this woman decided to yell at me, "God, I can barely hear myself think." So I replied, "Funny, I can still hear you complaining." If you knew me, you'd know I had the perfect facial expression to go with it. I looked like a snarky little shit. So I told her I've been handing her back the same drink every morning for over a year. I also told her, kind of embarrassing that right? 3/8 is half a pump for all intents and purposes here, ma'am. Oh my god, she lost it. She demanded my manager fire me on the spot or she'd call corporate and we'd lose her business, blah 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 blah. Well, I hated my manager. He was the opposite of a spirit of the rules law kind of person and really enjoyed making our lives more difficult than they needed to be. I knew that firing me actually reflects quite negatively on his quarterly reviews and knew he wouldn't do it. He told her it was my last day and the best he could do was send me home early, which would be a reward rather than a punishment since the store was so busy. She proceeded to spend the next 2 hours on hold with corporate outside. Then, when corporate either accidentally hung up on her or told her to shove it, she threw her glasses, called me a little bitch in front of a ton of kids, and ran to her car. To her husband. So sorry for that night, bro. Totally my fault.